If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. There are places on our planet that feel ancient, places that hold secrets older than human memory. Deep within the sprawling, jagged spine of the Peruvian Andes, there is one such place. It is a mountain known to the local Quechua people only as Apu Asangate, the mountain that whispers. It does not appear on any official maps. The locals will not guide you there. They say the mountain is alive, that it breathes with a cold, ancient breath. They speak of strange lights that dance upon its peak during the darkest nights. Lights that are not stars and not of this world. The stories are passed down in hushed tones. Tales of people who ventured too close and were never seen again. Their spirits claimed by whatever sleeps within the stone heart of that cursed peak. The mountain itself is a forbidding sight, a jagged tooth of black rock that tears at the sky. Unlike its neighbors, which are often dusted with snow or covered in hardy vegetation, Apu Asangate is eerily barren. Its slopes are a cascade of sharp dark scree, as if the mountain actively sheds its skin to prevent anything from gaining a foothold. The air around it is said to be unnaturally still. The usual sounds of the high Andes, the wind, the call of a condor, are strangely absent. Local legends claim that the mountain consumes sound, swallowing it whole. They believe it is a guardian, a powerful entity that protects something hidden, something that should never be disturbed by the outside world. For centuries, these stories were enough to keep people away. They were dismissed by outsiders as simple folklore, the superstitious tales of isolated communities. But folklore often has a seed of truth, a kernel of a real event that has been wrapped in layers of myth over generations. The whispers of Apu Asangate are different. They are more persistent, more specific. They don't just speak of a spirit or a god. They speak of a structure, a place built by hands that were not human. They call it the Wasi Rumi, the stone house, and they believe it is a doorway to another place, a place of immense power and unimaginable horror. This isn't just a story about a scary mountain. It's about a place that actively defies exploration, a puzzle that seems to fight back. The very atmosphere around Apu Asangate feels heavy, charged with a palpable sense of dread. The local people are not just afraid, they are reverent in their fear. They leave offerings at the base of the paths that lead towards it, not to appease a god, but to beg a monster to stay asleep. They know that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, some doors are meant to remain closed forever. The question for any explorer is, are you brave enough or foolish enough to try and turn the key? Every great mystery has its first victim, the one who pulled back the curtain just enough to see the terrifying truth. For Apu Asangate, that was Dr. Aris Thorne. In 1953, Thorne, a brilliant but obsessive British archaeologist, became fixated on the legends of the Wasi Rumi. He dismissed the local warnings as primitive superstition, believing the stories hid the location of a lost Incan city filled with gold. He assembled a small, well-equipped team and set off into the mountains, determined to be the one to solve the riddle of the Whispering Mountain. He was a man of science and logic, convinced that every shadow held a rational explanation. Thorne's expedition was meticulously documented in his journal, which was later found in a half-buried tent miles from the mountain. The early entries are filled with confidence and scientific observation. He describes the difficult terrain and the strange silence that unnerved his local porters, who eventually deserted him. As they drew closer to the mountain, the tone of the journal begins to shift. Thorne writes of a persistent low hum that seemed to emanate from the ground itself, a vibration that his equipment couldn't measure. He notes how compasses would spin wildly and how the team felt a constant, oppressive feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The breakthrough came on their 9th day. They discovered a fissure, an almost invisible crack in the rock face, hidden behind a curtain of frozen water. The air that flowed from it was unnaturally warm and carried a strange metallic scent. Thorne's journal entry from that night is frantic, almost illegible. He describes finding a passage that led deep into the mountain, its walls too smooth to be natural. They had found it. They had found the entrance to the temple. His excitement is palpable on the page, the triumphant scrawl of a man who believes he is on the verge of the greatest discovery in history. It was his last coherent entry. The final pages of the journal are a descent into madness. They are a chaotic jumble of sketches, frantic warnings, and disconnected phrases. "The walls breathe," he wrote. "It knows we are here." He describes geometric patterns that seem to shift and move, and a sound like 1,000 whispers speaking in a language that hurt to hear. The final chilling words, scrawled with a trembling hand, are simply, "Not a temple, a tomb." We woke it up. The rescue party that found the campsite reported that the team's equipment was intact, but the men were gone. They had vanished without a trace, swallowed by the mountain they sought to conquer. The few who claim to have followed in Thorne's footsteps and entered the fissure speak of a place that defies all laws of nature and architecture. The entrance tunnel is not a rough-hewn cave, but a perfectly smooth, cylindrical passage that spirals down into the earth. There are no tool marks on the walls, which are made of a strange black stone that feels warm and slightly soft to the touch, almost like skin. The air grows thick and heavy, and the low hum Thorne described becomes a physical presence, a deep vibration that resonates in your bones and teeth. It's a feeling that suggests you are not entering a building, but the gullet of some colossal living creature. The tunnel opens into a vast central chamber, a space so large that a flashlight beam cannot reach the ceiling. There is no discernible light source, yet the chamber is filled with a faint, pulsing green luminescence that seems to emanate from the walls themselves. These walls are not flat. They are covered in intricate carvings, but not of gods or animals. The carvings depict complex, non-Euclidean geometric shapes and alien constellations unknown to modern astronomy. Staring at them for too long is said to induce vertigo and intense nausea, as if your mind is struggling to comprehend something it was never meant to see. Perhaps the most disturbing feature is what survivors call the breathing walls. Periodically, the entire chamber seems to subtly contract and expand, like the slow, rhythmic breathing of a sleeping giant. With each exhale, a wave of cold air washes through the chamber, carrying with it faint, disembodied whispers. The sound is not human. It is a chorus of soft, sibilant noises that seem to form words in a language that feels both ancient and utterly alien. The acoustics of the chamber are bizarre. Sound does not echo but is instead absorbed, making you feel profoundly isolated even if you are with a group. The architecture itself is a nightmare. There are doorways that lead nowhere, staircases that spiral into solid ceilings, and corridors that seem to subtly change their layout when you're not looking. It's a labyrinth designed not to protect something, but to trap it, or perhaps to trap whatever is foolish enough to enter. The place feels profoundly wrong, a violation of the natural order. It wasn't built for human use. The scale, the atmosphere, the impossible geometry, it all points to a single terrifying conclusion. This place was not built by human hands. It is something older, something that existed long before us, and it does not welcome visitors. Personal accounts from those who have allegedly entered the Wasi Rumi are rare and often fragmented. These are the stories of people whose minds were pushed, honestly, right to the breaking point. One of the most compelling comes from a former Peruvian Special Forces soldier named Mateo, who was part of a covert military operation to investigate the site back in the late 1990s. His official report was classified, but, years later, he spoke to just a handful of journalists, his voice still trembling with a fear that time had not erased. He described his unit's mission to map the interior and assess any potential threat, a mission from which only he and one other soldier ever returned. Mateo spoke of the psychological toll the temple takes. He said the whispering wasn't just a sound. It was like an intrusion into your mind. It would find your deepest fears and regrets and whisper them back to you in the voices of your loved ones. He saw his deceased mother standing in a dark corridor beckoning him forward. His squad mate broke down, screaming that he was being tormented by the ghosts of men he had killed in combat. The temple fed on their sanity, turning their own minds against them. It was a weaponized form of psychological warfare, waged by an enemy they couldn't see or comprehend. The most terrifying moment, according to Mateo, happened in a lower chamber. There they found a massive, perfectly spherical stone floating a few feet above the floor, held in place by no visible means. The sphere was covered in the same shifting geometric patterns as the walls, and the humming was loudest here. As they approached, the whispers grew into a deafening roar, and the patterns on the sphere began to glow with intense, blinding light. The last thing Mateo remembered was an overwhelming feeling of pure terror and the sensation of being utterly insignificant, a microbe in the presence of an ancient, cosmic intelligence. He woke up alone, miles from the mountain's entrance, with no memory of how he got there. His gear was gone, and he had strange, scar-like patterns on his arms that mirrored the carvings in the temple. The other survivor was found weeks later, wandering the desert, his mind completely shattered, unable to speak a coherent sentence. The Peruvian government quickly sealed the area, declaring it a restricted military zone. The official story was a training accident, but the conspiracy theories began immediately. What did they find in there? And, more importantly, what did they let out? Mateo's story is a chilling warning that some mysteries are not just puzzles to be solved, but active threats to our reality. Today, Apuausan Gate remains under a silent quarantine. The Peruvian government denies the existence of any temple and aggressively patrols the surrounding region, turning away any hikers, journalists, or explorers who venture too close. Officially, the area is a protected ecological preserve. Unofficially, it is a containment zone. The stories of military black sites and secret research facilities operating in the area persist, fueling theories that world powers are not just studying the temple, but are trying to control, or maybe even communicate with, whatever resides within its breathing walls. Is it a source of unimaginable power, an ancient weapon, or a slumbering deity? The mystery of what happened to Dr. Thorne and his team, and to Mateo's unit, remains unsolved. Their disappearances are just footnotes in a much larger, darker story. Are they simply lost to the mountain, or did they become part of it? The local legends say the mountain demands a sacrifice, that it must be fed to remain dormant. These modern disappearances feel like echoes of those ancient warnings, a terrifying reminder that the myths might be more literal than we ever imagined. The temple is not a passive ruin. It is an active predatory entity, and its hunger seems to be growing with each new intrusion. The question that haunts us is not just what the temple is, but what it is becoming. Are the strange lights seen on the peak more frequent now? Is the low hum that vibrates through the earth growing in intensity? The locals believe so. They say the whispers are getting louder, carried further on the wind than ever before. They fear that the intrusions of the last century, from Thorne's obsessive quest to the military's covert operations, have disturbed its long slumber. They believe we have not just knocked on the door of the Wasi Rumi. We have broken the lock. We are left with a chilling uncertainty. Perhaps the temple is nothing more than a geological anomaly and a collection of terrifying campfire stories. Or perhaps it is exactly what the legends claim: a doorway, a prison, a tomb, a thing that is waiting. Is it a sleeping giant that will one day be fully explored and explained by science? Or is it an awakening terror, a cosmic horror that is slowly stirring from its eons-long sleep, ready to remind humanity of its fragile place in the universe? The truth remains hidden,